Members, call the House to order. We're going to, before we go into third reading and regular, I understand we've got some concurrences here and a joint conference committee. Oh, just a joint conference committee, so this won't take very long here. Chairman Locke. Yes, and it is on the bill under amendments, if you'd like to look at this and follow along, so.
Thank you.
Representative Locke, please proceed.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move Joint Conference Committee report referencing Senate message number 298, and this is on House Bill 11. And I know many of you, we voted to not concur on this before, so the Joint Conference Committee met here just, time has slipped by me, maybe it was last night, I can't remember. But let me go over this just real quickly. So this is on House Bill 4, and you should be able to find the amendment. Oh, sorry, House Bill 11, oops, yes, 11, my bad. House Bill 11. So I move the Joint Conference Committee report for this, and let me explain what has changed. So as you recall, we had amended out the what am I trying to say? The sunset from the bill. I'm losing it here, so thank you for the help. We had amended out the sunset when they had moved the sunset from 2027 to 2037. We had completely removed that, and in the engrossed bill, you'll actually see where we had made it to ongoing, so we completely removed that. In the conference committee, we had this discussion with the Senate. The Senate did not believe that they could get the House's position through the Senate, and we had a long talk about this. We discussed maybe moving this to 20 years, whether they thought they could push 20 years, they thought they could, and ultimately they thought they probably could comfortably push 15 years. So originally it was set at 10 years. Now, when I say it was set at 10 years, it went from 2027 to 2037. So in the negotiation, we basically moved it from 2037. So the sunset is back in place. And so the way it reads now until December 31st, 2042. So we've moved it to 15 years for this sunset in this bill. So basically, I asked for your aye on the concurrence for this, and I asked for your aye vote, and I'm available for questions.
Thank you, Representative. Discussion. Representative Brown.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Just curious, I noticed that there's only 5 signatures on the conference committee. And I'm just kind of curious, the dissenting party as to why they may have not signed. And then the other thing I would say is kind of the same thing I said during this entire argument. If we want to have a talk about lifting taxes, that's fine. But ladies and gentlemen, this body spoke loud and clear that if we want to tax something, bring a tax bill. There's nobody in this body who wants to bring a tax bill, but we're arguing over a sales tax exemption. So I'm going to be voting no on concurrence because this body spoke loud and clear. And this body said, no, we don't want a sunset date. We did it twice. And now we're getting to, well, we'll give you 15 years. Bring a bill. Bring a bill that's going to tax these people. Otherwise, this is all for naught.
Thank you, Representative Brown. Representative Yin, first time, please.
Mr. Speaker, thank you. I had to check my own vote just to make sure. I did vote for third reading of this bill. I probably actually, I won't vote for adopting the conference committee report. I think having a sunset date like this is really silly, frankly. Not to put too much intent behind the the result of the conference committee. To the question brought by the chairman of transportation, that member on the other chamber is someone who didn't vote for the bill either. He actually didn't vote for it in committee as well. So I think he's generally against the bill. So I think he was unlikely to support any longer sunset date than the one that was in the original introduced version. But I think if we want no sunset date, then we should stick to no sunset date. Putting 42 in there is a little ridiculous. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you. Representative Davis, first time.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I sat in there on this meeting. There was one party from the other chamber that was hung up in another meeting, so that got that pretty well squared up. The two members from the other chamber had removed the sunset date, but there was so much resistance from the other chamber. And then we listened to what industry had to say there. They testified, and they felt that we weren't going to get the 0 in there. That was just a plain and simple fact. But they thought we could maybe bump that to 15 and go from there. And so that's what we chose to do, was go with the 15, which was between the 20 and 10. And still not got, we still didn't get the hog eye, but it is there and was discussed heavily. So I would recommend concurrence on this. Vote aye.
Representative Brady, first time, please.
Thank you, Chairman. I know we discussed on the floor if we could get some kind of numbers back, how they're able to save and what it's costing the state. Is there anything in there that would put something in there or keep something in there so we can follow along and see how this is helping industry and such? Thank you.
Thank you, Representative. Representative Davis. Oh, just one first for a second, so you'll have to be on the second go round. Yep. Representative Filer, please.
Thanks, Mr. Speaker. I think I'm on it against this. We did speak quite a bit. This body debated pretty heavily on this, on whether it should be 10 years, 20 years, 15 years, all those different things. But we have like 59, or I can't remember exact how many exemptions we have in this state right now. Or 56, 57, 50 something, okay? But there's a lot of these exemptions that we have to keep coming back and relooking whether we're gonna extend them and all that. And most of the time, what do? We extend them. Every time we extend them. If you watch from the last 10 years, we've extended almost every single one of them. So why not extend all of them forever and until we want to bring a different bill to actually tax an industry? So folks, I would vote no on this. I mean, we got till 2027, I believe, to look at this. So I still think that we have time to look at this and maybe look at all the rest of our exemptions also. But so I'd vote no on this unless we want to keep talking about taxing an industry we're never going to tax. Thanks.
Representative Kelly, first time.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I encourage and I vote. We don't need to rehash this again. Some battles are just not worth fighting.
Any other representative for the first time? First time? Second time? Representative Yin for second time.
Mr. Speaker, I just wanted to correct myself. I said 42 on the mic. The date in the conference committee report is 2037. I still think that we should either choose a real number or choose no sunset. I don't think that number still makes any sense.
Representative Brown, Chairman Brown.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. So, body, I want to be kind of open and honest about what's going to happen here, however this body chooses to vote. So it's more of an information at this point. If you vote aye at this point, we adopt what this is, and the other body down the hall decides to do the same. It's going to go down to the chief executive downstairs, and it'll go for signature, and it'll probably go into law. If you vote no, which is what I'm encouraging on this, because as the other representative from this county said, we've got 2 more years to figure this out too. But a no vote means that a second conference committee can be reappointed. And we can go back and we can fight this out yet again. And you can have this discussion with the other body and you can say, okay, well then, the problem that I have with this, ladies and gentlemen, is that other body can't bring the bill to tax. It's always going to have to originate in this house. All revenue generation bills have to originate in this house. So it's really easy for that other body to sit there and say, yeah, well, we're never doing that because we never have to vote on that first. They're never going to bring a taxation bill forward. So that's what they're doing, is they're forcing the hand on this house saying, then bring the bill, which is exactly what I'm saying. To argue this over and over and over. And it's the second time I've done this. I agree, it's not necessarily a hill worth dying on. But ladies and gentlemen, these are the discussions that should be happening, not as a sunset date, but as to whether or not we actually want to tax something. And there's not a single body in this soul that says, hey, look, we want to go out and go tax mining. There's nobody in here. I didn't see a bill get brought that said they wanted to do that. As a matter of fact, I saw the exact opposite this year. So a no vote gives our leadership the availability to appoint another conference committee, that leadership to appoint another conference committee, and we can have this discussion yet again. We've got plenty of time to get something else across this finish line, and if we fail and we don't get this bill, they still have a tax exemption for another 2 years. We can have this fight again next year. This body resoundingly said, give them the tax break and take this sunset off. Give industry something that they can rely on from here and into perpetuity. Stop having them come down here to lobby this situation every 10 years. Okay, well, we pushed it out another 5. Vote no.
Others, second time. Representative Davis.
I would urge an aye vote on this. Every fall, December 1st, we get a report from Revenue about every one of these tax deals. If we want to examine that report, we can pull whichever industry we have in question out and run a bill. But currently, we do not do that, do we? That's the good bringer's point, but that would be the body's decision to do that, and we have that tool available to us. This just currently allows the industry to know that for the next 15 years that they will have this granted to them unless at any time in there, if I understand this correctly, if we see there is a red flag, we as the body could pull that out and discuss it and deal with it then. But this just grants a little assurance to the industry up there. And with that, I would ask for aye vote on concurrence.
Any other members for the second time? Representative Kelly, second time.
Let's just remember that the clock is running. We have limited time, limited resources, limited energy, and limited attention spans. Let's move on from this.
Any other members? That's it. Back to the bringer. Chairman Locke.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Body, I ask for your aye vote. I think we do need to give the industry some stability on this. A no vote certainly will probably put us into another JCC. I do think the people we had on the JCC negotiating with us were very favorable to our position, but we're trying to be honest as they could be about what they believed was could be pushed through the Senate at this point. I'd like to give the industry some stability, so I ask for your aye vote on concurrence. And then if we want to come back, bring this back again, which I kind of agree with many of you who have pushed for putting this to in perpetuity. I agree with you. And I was comfortable. I know on occasion I have voted, I was okay with the shorter term, but did not disagree with that position. So at this point, please vote aye. Let's give this industry some stability. Let's come back and push it and get it the way we want it. Thank you.
Members, we are voting on the motion to concur with Senate amendments to House Bill 11. A majority of the elected members is required. Chief Clerk will call the roll.
Allemand, Andrew, Angelos, Banks, Bear, Brady, Bratton, Brown Gary. Brown Landon. Byron. Campbell Elisa. Campbell Kevin. Chestick. Clauston. Connolly. Davis. Eklund. Erickson. Filer. Geringer. Guggenmoss. Haroldson. Harshman. Heiner. Heft. Jarvis. Johnson. Kelly. Knapp. Larson Lloyd. Larson JT. Lawley. Lean. Locke. Lucas. McCann. Nicholas. Ottman. Pendergraft. Posey. Provenza. Riggins, excused. Rodriguez Williams. Schmid. Sherwood. Singh. Smith. Storer. Strock. Stivar. Tarver. Thayer. Washut. Repeat. Wasserberger. Webb. Weber. Worf. Williams. Winter. Wiley. Yin. Mr. Speaker, are there any changes? Are there any changes? Closing vote. Vote closed. 43 aye, 17 no, 2 excused.
By your vote, you have voted to concur with Senate amendments to House Bill 11.
Mr. Speaker, sorry,
Oh,
just a
yes.
point of clarification. I think your script should actually be, we voted to adopt the Joint Conference Committee report. We didn't concur with the amendments.
Oh, that? Let me find that. Okay. By your vote, you have adopted the Joint Conference Committee Report number 298 to House Bill 11. Representative Lean.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Pursuant Rule 7.3, I move to lay back Senate File 62 for 1 day.
Is there any discussion? Seeing none, well, 62, seeing no discussion, 60, nope,
Mr. Speaker, I would object.
seeing one objection. Do you want any discussion? Representative Lawley?
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I would like to explain to the body a little bit about what's going on in the other chamber and conversations we're having with regard to Senate File 62 and what they're considering over there at the moment, House Bill 72, our position on the issue of bathrooms, locker rooms, that subject, showers, sleeping quarters, overnight sleeping quarters, dorm rooms, all of the above. And we were kind of beginning, yesterday afternoon I was approached about possibly some kind of a compromise, and we're in the process of trying to work that. They laid the other bill, the other chamber, they laid it aside on second reading, so we're now back off schedule again. And one of my goals is that when I have, here's the accommodation, and you will eventually hear some amendments, but putting the K through 12 space here in Senate File 62, keeping the space for colleges, universities of Wyoming and the community colleges will remain in the other bill. So we're going to have possibly two bills on the same subject, but we've kind of not had overlap on the subjects. But it does raise a different kind of issue about continuity and having kind of comprehensive policy that makes sense. And that's kind of hard to do on the fly here. So my goal in asking for it to be set back and is that we have another day to work through that, but also get them back on track, because if they come out together, then I've talked to leadership in both houses about them being put in a joint committee together, so we can make sure that in that space, as we've divided that up, that the policy, it doesn't conflict or it's not confusing in some way. And so this is an issue about policy. And again, it does not in any way affect this bill getting passed. We still have days left on the committee of whole, and I think we're close, but I'm not, that's something that's always a dynamic thing because we're dealing with an entirely different body. So I'm just asking that we do that, we lay this back, and we get these kind of details worked out, and then we execute some amendments, and then we can work through a conference committee to make sure it still is consistent and clear for those who will have to implement the policy. And we don't kind of unintentionally create some confusion by the way we're doing it. So that's my concern, and I would ask for an aye vote to lay it aside for just one day.
Okay, any other members? Discussion. Representative Larson, JT. Representative Larson.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. On and against the objection, I think we should definitely make sure these bills are lined up. I know this body and the other body have kind of spoken on these bills. We resoundingly support passing this legislation. It's just about making sure we're not putting legislation in conflict with each other. So I believe it's a no vote on the objection to lay it back. So unless I'm wrong, so somebody can correct me.
Yes, on the motion to lay back.
The motion to lay back is what is being moved on. So
Yeah.
the motion to lay back is what we're going to be voting on. There's been an objection to that motion, so it's a majority vote of the body as to whether or not we will lay this back. That's where we're at. So if we're going to lay it back, we need a majority vote of this body in order to lay the bill back. If there's not a majority, the bill will not be laid back. So, any other discussion? Representative Williams, second time.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. So again, this is the third time that there's been an effort to lay this bill back. I'm a little curious why the good bringer of the bill that's
Okay, that's fine.
similar to this isn't making the motion herself. I appreciate the fact that there's some amendments already in the works on this bill for third reading. I was told earlier that the good representative wanted to bring some new amendments. And the good representative mentioned earlier that she doesn't want to do anything on the fly or operate like this. And I can tell you, Mr. Speaker, that the good former speaker that lives in the Windy City, he and I don't always agree politically, but there's something that I've learned from him. And that's how to put amendments in fast and work hard on the fly to make bills better as we see fit. This process has been impeded now, attempting to be on the third time. This bill, in particular, Senate File 62, derived from my community. So obviously I'm going to fight for it here at the mic because the problem, the genesis of the bill originated in my community. There's 6 co-sponsors in this body on that bill. I think we need to put aside what's important or what's going on the other side of the hall and work the bill, not impede the process. This isn't a horse race. Let's get the work done. We're on the clock. We've got a lot of other bills to debate and get to. Let's work the bill.
Any other discussion? Representative Lean.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I just urge the body for an aye vote, for good policy does take time sometimes, and we want to make sure that all the social issues have the same definitions and that we're making sure that our upcoming generations are covered. Aye on the motion, please.
Anyone else? I've got, well, let's see, no, run out. Representative Larson? It's the only other one.
Me.
Okay, back to the bringer. Or actually,
Thank you.
Representative Lawley, excuse me, yeah.
That's all right. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Body, this is really about where we are in a process and about defending our position. We had an overwhelming vote on House Bill 72 that had significant policy and processes in it, in speaking into this area of uses of bathrooms and locker rooms and changing rooms. And so we're, again, trying to work through the fact that we have another bill here and keep some consistency in policy. So, you know, I think for me, it's policy over politics, policy over personalities. It's about, do we want to get this policy right in Wyoming for those who have to implement it to be clear, and we're aligning some languages, some definitions and things, and that's what we're trying to do. And the other body across the way doesn't really quite operate at the speed that we do. And this bill was laid aside yesterday in second reading so that we could begin to work on this potential compromise. So that puts us off by a day in sync, because there's certain things, you may not know this, but once a bill leaves third reading here, it begins to go through a process that's automatic. It's automatic and it happens. You can't really stop it. And the goal for me is in giving up of what was asked of me and putting in here K through 12, is that we have a chance to look at both bills when they've come out of both chambers and evaluate if we've gotten the policy consistent, or if it did get out of sync in some way that we might need to address in a joint conference committee. That's all there is. It's no other way prejudicing the bill. So again, I just ask for your aye vote, that we try to do the good work of policymaking, and we focus on, and especially, there's not many other issues that we're looking at this session, that the policy needs to be well-written, it needs to be right, and it needs to be consistent for those who were asking to follow it. So again, I would just ask for an aye vote, because that's what this will do. It in no way prejudices this bill getting out of the House. It doesn't at all. I plan to support this bill. Will have some amendments for alignment purposes, as was agreed to. So I would just ask for your aye vote at this point to lay aside. Thank you.
Members, you are voting on the willingness of the body to lay back Senate File 62. It's a majority voice vote. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. All those opposed, no. The bill will be laid back one day. Division being called. All those in favor of laying this bill back one day, please stand. Okay. All right, you may be seated. It will be laid back one day. What was 5:45? So, all right.
Mr. Speaker.
Representative Pendergraft, please.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. By way of announcement concerning message 327 on Senate File 33, non-citizen driver's license and ID card revisions, the Senate JCC has rescinded their non-compliance, non-conformance, Anyway, they gave up and went home, so we won that round, and the bill will remain as we left it.
Reseated from non-concurrence, okay. Sherwood, please.
Mr. Speaker, privilege of the floor.
Please, by all means.
Thank you. Body, I would like for you to recognize some guests that we have with us this evening. These are photographers who have captured the most beautiful parts of our state and have shared so very generously their images and their creation with us throughout the building. So tonight there is a reception honoring the photographers that are featured in our public meeting rooms. That will be from 6 to 7:30 in the Capitol Extension. And with us today, if you guys would please stand. We have Bill and his wife Lori from Du Bois. We have Ron Hayes from Douglas, Tim Dolan from Sheridan, and Peter Mungolds from Jackson. Welcome.
Thank you for being here and welcome to the House. You're the folks that memorialized how beautiful our state is, I'm assuming, in other parts of it. So thank you for doing that. Okay. Yep, we can do some re-referrals. That would be a time to do it, then we'll head on back in. Majority Leader.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Pursuant to Rule 4-7, I would like to re-refer Senate File 144 from Minerals Committee to TRW, which is 6. Thank you.
Is there any objection? Seeing no objection from the body, it is so moved. Okay, anything else? We got going? Don't have anybody at the mics? All right, we're back into third reading, regular. We are at that order of business of third reading and final passage. The first bill for our consideration is Senate File 98.
Senate File 98, sponsored by Senator Olson. School Board Trustees, Party Affiliation, an act relating to ballots being enacted by the legislature of the state of Wyoming.
We have amendments, so Representative Chastik, please.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I would like to move third reading amendment number 1 to Senate File 98, and I will withdraw at the appropriate time. Body, I don't plan to spend a lot of time on this right now. I do appreciate the conversation we had on Committee of the Whole. I do appreciate the amendment that was adopted that I think it made the bill better. But I do want to just take a pause for 1 second to just make sure we're thinking about what we're trying to accomplish here with this bill. I think I've had a lot of conversations during the debate and after the debate and among members here that that I think there's a consensus. I think most of us agree that we really don't want a lot of politics at the school board. The school board should be a non-political entity and should be focused on the best interests of the students and best educational practices, and that is not a political thing to do. There have been some conversations about, however, there are politics in the school boards. Yeah, that is probably true. And therefore we should acknowledge it and work with it. And that's where I fall off the wagon. I think that we don't want to do anything to encourage something that I think we all agree is not good. Having politics in the school boards and in education is not a good thing. And putting party affiliations on the ballot seems to suggest that this body agrees that politics should be there, because we're putting it on the ballot. And I don't think that's a good thing. I don't think we should be encouraging more politicization of the school governance of our schools. Ask your constituents, do you want more politics or do you want less politics? Are you tired of all the political debates? And again, putting party designations on the ballot just encourages more politics. It creates more turf for the political parties to fight over and increases division among our voters. And that's not a good thing. I don't think we should encourage that. I fear that requiring political parties, and I do appreciate that having the option to declare independent helps, it makes it a much better bill, but still requiring a party designation may discourage good members, good people to run for the office. And I don't want to put any more impediments in front of good people running for school board. So let's not create more turf, more division, and I urge a no vote on this amendment, on this bill.
Thank you, Representative. Representative Andrew, Chairman Andrew, first time.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. On and against the amendment, on and for the bill. I really do think that this bill is an acknowledgement that there are politics on these boards. I don't think we encourage it. I think what we encourage is stronger voter turnout and more people having a say in how these boards are elected. Thank you.
Other members for their first time. Representative Thayer, first time.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I served 2 terms on the school board for the kids, not for politics, but for the kids. I spoke the other day about the challenges that school boards face are nonpartisan in nature. They relate to policymaking, budget, supervision. School boards are motivated to prioritize students' interests and local challenges that local district serves. Data. Rather than evaluating ideas based on we should be evaluating ideas based on research and student outcome data and not finding themselves embroiled in partisan conflicts. Another concern I have would be, we're talking about voter turnout, that including, another concern would be to lose the trust of the voters, including the parents, that all they see is that there's more conflict on that board and they don't want to be involved. That's a big concern of mine. Remember that this is about our next generation. This is about our kids. This is about our legacy, not about party, but about the kids.
Representative Harrelson, first time.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. So on and against the amendment, on and for the bill, wanted to just kind of, I've had some questions and wanted to clarify. If this bill were to pass, it doesn't shift the trustee elections into the primary. They stay in the general, but next to their name would just go their affiliation, be it independent or Republican, Democrat, whatever it is. And at this point, this is helping to inform voters. At the end of the day, that's what this is. It isn't that they would whittle down through the primary, going into the general. This is just informational sake and giving the people the opportunity to say, well, that's what they're registered as. And so if in a situation where they have not done their due diligence or they have not had the conversation, they have the opportunity to see that, and I think there's just a clarity that comes with that. So wanted to just make that known because there's been some miscommunication on that. And I believe that there's a lot of conversation. We don't want to bring politics into the school board. Man, I'll tell you what, if you go to any school board right now, there's politics in the school board. That's just the reality of it. And so I think there's a point of having this conversation and moving forward. I believe every person, I would hope every person that ever runs for those positions are doing it for the kids. But this would just make it where on that general election ballot, you get to a clear idea of what party that they have registered with and affiliate with.
Representative Larson Lloyd, first time.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, for the amendment against the bill. Largely because of, I think, my community, I've got a number of employees of federal agencies that will not allow them to participate in partisan elections. And we have one really good member of our school board who works for a federal agency that would not be able to participate, would not be able to run for school board if it was a partisan election. He was key in getting our school board to adopt policy to allow teachers to carry firearms. I really don't think that would have happened without him. And he, like others around the state who are actively engaged and involved in their communities would no longer be able to participate if this bill passed. So again, on for the amendment and opposed to the bill.
Representative Davis, first time.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. On for the amendment, against the bill. I don't want to see party voting, voting on down the line. You see that far too often on our generals and our, election here. So I think by keeping that off the bill, that allows the voter to go out there and identify these prospects and give a little one-on-one there,
Representative Kelly, please.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Very briefly, what this bill does do and what it does not do. What it does do is prohibit federal employees from volunteering their time to be on school boards. That's definite. It also requires somebody to declare a party or declare their independence from a party on a ballot. What it does not do is reveal the politics of the candidate. Simply putting an R or a D or an I after a name doesn't really tell us anything, and we've experienced that at all levels and all offices. So I'm against the bill.
Representative Bratton, first time, please.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I also have a concern about the federal employees. I know there are some currently that would have to resign their positions in this state, and there is nothing that prevents the trustees or the people who are running for trustees in declaring their affiliation. In my county, we're very fortunate. We have a lot of forums where a lot of questions are asked of our political candidates, including our highly contested school board races, which I appreciate. So I also will be on the amendment and against the bill. Thank you.
Representative McCann, first time.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. These school boards end up picking curriculums, and whether we like it or not, there's different curriculums, and they are somewhat politically motivated. So I would like to know what kind of people we have on these school boards, so I have a good idea what kind of curriculums they're going to pick. Just a thought.
Representative Campbell, please.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. On and for the amendment and against the bill, for the primary reason that we've heard from several representatives from across the state. Passing this legislation will be it's very supported in some counties, and in others will do tremendous harm. And I'm not in favor of harming some of our counties and some of our communities and their wishes. So yeah, we may have some that are in support, but we have some that are not. And so voting for this bill creates harm, and that is not okay. So against the bill and for the amendment.
Representative Williams.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. In supermajority counties such as mine, and I believe many of yours, I feel like Senate File 98 may compel minority party members to register as the majority party to be viable candidate. And therefore, I believe it will have the unintended consequence of watering down the majority party in supermajority counties. So I'm on the and for the amendment and against the bill.
Representative Weber, first time.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'm on and against the amendment, and I am an aye on the bill. I'm against the amendment because politics are already in our school boards. We've seen that in the last 4 years, 3 years, 2 years. We've already seen that. School boards are making decisions on party platform values, no matter what political party you're on right now. School boards have decided, is porn going to be in the library? If boys can play in girls' sports, if girls can play in boys' sports, if school-age kids will wear a mask, if they're required to have a vaccine, or even what bathroom to use. I'm against the amendment and in favor of the bill. I urge an aye vote on the bill, a no vote on the amendment. Thank you.
Representative Connolly, first time.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. It's good afternoon, everybody. I am for this amendment. I am definitely opposed to this bill. And I don't think having an R or a D or an ABC or a ACDC behind your name to be a good school board member makes any difference at all. And so I'm opposed to this.
Please, Representative Jarvis, don't encourage that. Representative Jarvis.
Thank you, Speaker. I'll try not to entertain that one. I just want to clear up a couple things that have been said. When it comes to curriculum, the processes that are in place, and I really haven't seen it otherwise in any other school board or districts in the state, but we always have public comment. After the curriculums, like the teachers will choose 3 that they really like, and they'll go through a vetting process of all these different things. And it's presented and opened up. Natrona County does a 21-day public comment where public can enter in, and then before it's adopted, the school board addresses it. And when we say that the school boards do all of these things, like we adopt all of these different policies that happen at the schools with bathrooms and with all of these different things, every single board meeting follows that law that we've kind of talked about that allows for public comment. They get the opportunity, the public gets the opportunity to show up. And a lot of us have very, very active public, like a very active community. So I don't think when we're considering those 2 statements as being the swaying on whether to do this or not to do it, I don't think we're looking holistically at what our boards do, because they really do try to, and part of what a board is supposed to do is reflect the wants and wishes of that local community. That's the importance of local control and really opening it up for public comment. Thanks.
Thank you, Representative. Representative Yin, Minority Leader Yin, please.
Mr. Speaker, thank you. You know, I spoke during committee of the whole of what I think will happen in my community, which is unlike what will probably happen in your community. I just want to reiterate what the good representative from Niobrara said. It's just going to be all people who are registered under the supermajority party. So putting that R next to the name isn't going to tell you anything. It's not going to tell you anything. All it's going to tell you is that everyone chose to run as the supermajority party because they think that's what they need to have to put their name there. Because they aren't going to be in a partisan primary, you're not going to have that partisan primary portion where you have only members of the party vote, but it's going to lean us further in a direction where everyone just registers as one party. So I think when we hear the intentions of what we want this bill to do, that it's going to lead to knowing what they are going to, how they're going to vote in, how they're going to vote in their school board meetings to establish whatever policy. That's not. The bill's not going to do that. All it's going to do is make sure that everyone who runs is going to put the letter next to their name that they think that they need to be a viable candidate in your school district. It won't do anything except for make people think less about going to their town halls, their forums, to actually figure out what the candidate truly believes, because they think it'll be easier now that they have, oh, you know what? They all have the party that I like anyways. I'm just going to vote for whichever ones are in the top 3 or top 4 that I like. I don't need to research the candidates at all. I have that party identification. The party identification is not going to do anything. So on and against the bill.
Representative Brady, first time.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I am reminded that members of school boards are volunteers, receive no pay, and act as trustees, not politicians. That's not to say that I don't see school districts swimming in politics, but just some food for thought. In a supermajority state, this bill may bring unintended consequences. And I really encourage the parents out there of every school district to get involved and get a hold of anybody running for school boards and vet them. Call them and talk to them, and vet all school board candidates as best as you can. And we'll just leave it at that in the hands of the parents. Thank you.
Thank you, Representative. Representative Schmidt, please, first time.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. One thing I like about this bill is we've heard a lot of people talk about in our communities, we kind of know what letter people are going to put next to their name. But one thing we also know about our communities is who, especially small communities like mine, we know who the people are. So if they put a letter next to their name and you know for certain they're really don't follow that particular party, I mean, that's kind of a lie right out of the gate. And that should tell you a lot about the person running for that spot. So I'm against the amendment and for the bill. Thank you.
Any others for their first time? Representative Posey, please.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I think with putting the letters behind the names doesn't accomplish anything, as the representative mentioned earlier, that it doesn't bother anything in terms of just putting a letter behind the name. You know, the three schools that are rural in the district that I serve in, they've had some long-standing board members there that have done a good job over the years. There's been very little turnover over the years, and the voices of the voters speak when they continue to put these people in. I just don't understand what putting a letter beside their name is going to accomplish. You know, the system's been in place. Our schools are doing a good job, at least in my district, as I'm sure they are across the state, but I'm for the amendment and against the bill. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you, Representative. Representative Wiley, first time.
Good afternoon, Mr. Speaker.
Good afternoon, Representative.
I just want to, kind of go back to this notion that we should be picking these candidates on merit, not affiliation. It's pretty cut and simple in my mind. I think you can get to a person's fabric more so by, becoming involved and questioning them and asking them what their beliefs are and how they're going to institute the betterment of their decisions towards the certain districts themselves and moving forward. Moving it into an affiliation could just put another layer of, kind of bureaucracy and decisions moving forward. I think the merit of the person stands overall.
Thank you, Representative. Any other members for their first time? We're still on first go round. First round. No others? Second round. Speak to the amendment, second time. None? Okay, back to the bringer. Representative Chestick, please.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and thanks for the great conversation, good debate. I really appreciated all the comments. The one thing I heard that I wanted to comment on is that we want to make sure that the voters have good information when they go to the polls. I agree with that completely. And we want the good information to be based on what they hear from the candidates' mouths, going to the forums and listening to, checking out the candidates. Let's not give them bad information or irrelevant information. Putting the letter on the ballot is irrelevant information, and you heard some good conversation about why that is. It doesn't really represent your political views necessarily. So let's not give voters irrelevant information to vote on and give them a soft out to allow them to rely on something that's not really reliable. Let's make them actually investigate the candidates, find out who they are, find out what their positions are, and by voting no on this bill, I think we advance that goal. And at that, I will withdraw the amendment.
The amendment has been retracted without objection from the body. Okay. Okay, members, Senate File 50, Senate File, which we at? I'm trying to, 98. I got so many notes up here, you won't believe it. Senate File 98, having been read 3 separate times, the question is, shall the bill pass? Chief Clerk will please call the roll.
Allemand? Andrew? Angelos? Banks? Bear? Brady? Bratton? Brown Gary? Brown Landon? Byron? Campbell Elisa? Campbell Kevin? Repeat? Chestick? Clauston? Connolly? Davis? Eklund? Erickson? Filer? Geringer? Guggenmoss? Haroldson? Harshman? Heiner? Heft? Jarvis? Johnson? Kelly? Knapp? Larson Lloyd? Larson JT? Lawley? Lean? Locke? Lucas? McCann? Nicholas? Ottman? Pendergraft? Posey? Provenza? Riggins, excused. Rodriguez Williams? Schmid? Sherwood? Singh? Smith? Storer? Strock? Stivar? Tarver? Thayer? Washut? Wasserberger? Webb? Weber? Worf? Williams? Winter? Wiley? Yin? Mr. Speaker, are there any changes? Are there any changes? Closing vote. Vote closed. 23 aye, 38 no, 1 excused.
Senate File 98, having failed to receive the affirmative vote of the majority of the members elected to the House, Senate File 98 has failed to pass the House. Okay. Representative Larson, JT.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Pursuant to House Rule 5-6, I move the House recall Senate File 19 from Committee Number 9. Following approval of that motion, it is my intention to then move that the House commit Senate File 19 to Committee Number 6, TRW.
We will require 5 seconds for this motion. 1, 2, 3. We've got Sherwood, Nicholas, Eklund, Storer. We need one more. Campbell. This is a debatable motion. I believe, isn't this not a debatable motion? Is there any discussion? Representative Bear.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'd just like to know if the chairman of the 2 committees involved are in agreement with this motion prior to voting on it.
Any other discussion? Representative Byron, Chairman Byron.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. To the good question asker, I was recently made aware of this, and I certainly have capacity to hear it, but have not had a chance to speak to the committee where it currently lies.
Any other discussion? Majority Leader Chairman Heiner.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I am not aware of this. There was no conversation made. There was never an effort made to bring this bill up on the list. So the rules of our body makes it so you can't overrule a chairman, but it would be beneficial if you attempt to work with the chairman first, rather than just try to overrule the chairman. So, it kind of good policy is try to work it out before you use the rules. So I'm on and opposed to this motion.
Any other discussion? Representative Larson, JT.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. This bill was a interim bill, Minerals Committee bill, and we are down to the last day of committee. We have 4 bills up on Wednesday. And there's just no avenue to get this bill out. It is an interim committee bill, and I think it should be given the light since we've invested time into it. And this was a last-minute motion that I thought of doing since we couldn't hear it in committee, and so there was no time. I was going to speak to the good chairman, but I believe he was in another meeting just a few moments ago. So, but I needed to get this motion out. So, encourage an aye vote on this motion.
Members, we are now voting on whether to recall Senate File Number 19 from Committee Number 9. Chief Clerk will call the roll.
Allemand? Andrew? Angelos? Banks? Bear? Brady? Bratton? Brown Gary? Brown Landon? Byron? Campbell Elisa? Campbell Kevin? Chestick? Clouston? Connolly? Davis? Eklund? Erickson? Filer? Geringer? Guggenmoss? Harrelson? Harshman? Heiner? Heft? Jarvis? Johnson? Kelly? Knapp? Larson Lloyd? Larson JT? Lawley? Lean? Locke? Lucas? McCann? Nicholas? Ottman? Pendergraft? Posey? Provenza? Riggins excused. Rodriguez Williams? Schmid? Sherwood? Singh? Smith? Storer? Strzok? Stivar? Tarver? Thayer? Washut? Wasserberger? Webb? Weber? Worf? Williams? Winter? Wiley? Yin? Mr. Speaker, are there any changes? Are there any changes? Closing vote. Vote closed. 16 aye, 45 no, 1 excused.
By your vote, you have chosen not to move Senate File Number 19 from Committee Number 9. Okay, next bill for our consideration is Senate File 195. Reading Clerk.
Senate File 195, sponsored by Senator Beitman. Small Business Emergency Bridge Loan Program. An act relating to emergency loan programs being enacted by the legislature of the state of Wyoming.
We've heard the reading of the bill and we have amendments. Speaker Nyman.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Ladies and gentlemen, I bring you third reading amendment. I move third reading amendment number 1 to Senate File Number 195 and would ask for your favorable consideration. This is an amendment that was brought to me by the land that, or the office that takes care of our lands and things like that. And it was brought to my attention that the office takes care of those lands. Said the director was wanting to try to do something to be able to help to move these things through these bridge loans a little bit quicker. And so through the office of the director, keeping things moving quickly as opposed to waiting for when the board that is in the office reports to meet the funds and to move those funds or loans during a disaster. This is really, quite frankly, ladies and gentlemen, this is a cleanup amendment that makes it possible for the director of that agency to get the working on that rulemaking right away and adds language to give the director the ability to approve and fund a loan within 5 days during a natural disaster. This is what the amendment does. Simple as that. So I would appreciate your support, and I vote on it.
Anyone for their first time? First time on the amendment? Seeing no one? Question having been called. All those in favor of third reading amendment number 1 to House Bill 190 or Senate File 195, please signify by saying aye. Opposed, no. That is passed. Senate File 195 having been read 3 separate times, the question is, shall the bill pass? Chief Clerk, please call the roll as soon as the computer decides to align with us.
Thank you, sir. You're welcome. If it was any easier than that, it'd be like falling off a log.
Ellamand? Andrew? Angelos? Banks? Bear? Brady? Repeat? Bratton? Brown, Gary? Brown, Landon? Byron? Campbell, Elisa? Campbell, Kevin? Chestick? Clauston? Connolly? Davis? Eklund? Erickson? Filer? Geringer? Guggenmoss? Haroldson? Harshman? Heiner? Heft? Jarvis? Johnson? Kelly? Knapp? Larson Lloyd? Larson JT? Lawley? Lean? Locke? Lucas? McCann? Nicholas? Ottman? Pendergraft? Posey? Provenza? Riggins, excused. Rodriguez Williams? Schmid? Sherwood? Singh? Smith? Storer? Strock? Stivar? Tarver? Thayer? Washut? Wasserberger? Webb? Weber? Worf? Williams? Winter? Wiley? Yin? Mr. Speaker? Landon? Or Brown Landon? Are there any changes? Are there any changes? Closing vote. Vote closed. 61 aye, 1 excused.
Senate File 195, having received the affirmative vote of the majority of members elected to the House, Senate File 195 has passed the House. Okay, moving on to the good majority floor leader, I trust, unless there's anything else that should duly be, okay, we're good.
Mr.
Majority
Speaker,
Floor Leader.
thank you. I move that the House resolve itself into committee of the whole.
You have heard the motion. All those in favor signify by saying aye. All those opposed, no. Motion has been adopted. Congratulations, Representative Byron. You got somebody else? Who else you got? Posey. Representative Posey, come ahead. You thought you got out of it? You're not going to get out of it. I'll be here today. You be here today. That would be good. Okay. Whenever you get tired of all the accolades,
well, if I have to leave, if I have to step down.
The committee of the whole will now please come to order. The first bill for our consideration this afternoon is SF 132. The reading clerk will read the bill.
Senate File 132, sponsored by Senator Jones, protecting critical infrastructure and system from drones, an act relating to defense forces and affairs. Mr. Speaker, your committee number 9, Minerals, Business, and Economic Development, to whom is referred Senate File 132 engrossed, protecting critical infrastructure and systems from drones, respectfully report same back to the House with the recommendation to do pass with the following amendments. Ayes. Representatives Campbell, Heiner, Knapp, Larson, Lawley, Riggins, Schmidt, Tarver, Weber. Representative Heiner, Chairman.
You have heard the reading of the bill. What is your pleasure, Chairman Heiner?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I move that when the Committee of the Whole rises to report, it do so with the recommendation that Senate File 132 do pass. And I further move the adoption of the Standing Committee amendment. And I turn over the explanation of the bill to the representative from the land of drones.
Representative Larson, JT.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Yes, my county is the land of drones, and it's been a concern for my community for the last few months, and very proud to bring this bill that's been worked on for the last couple of months to try to address that problem. First, I'll explain the Standing Committee amendment, then I'll move into the bill. Basically, what the Standing Committee amendment does is the committee felt that we also wanted to add a provision in there under the offenses, basically, to harass wildlife or livestock. So if anyone harasses wildlife or livestock with a drone, they will be guilty under the offenses under this act. Also, because this is such an emerging issue, and we need to give our law enforcement the tools to enforce this act, the committee felt it was necessary to change the effective date to immediately rather than July 1st. So if there's no questions on the Standing Committee amendment, I'll call for the question.
Is there any discussion on the amendment? Representative Ottman.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just a quick question for the bringer. While I agree that this would be, I do have a question on what about the government trapper?
Representative Chesnick.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. On the amendment, which changes the effective date to immediate, anytime we create a new offense, we ought to give the public some notice that there might be an offense out there, and to make it effective immediately doesn't really give anybody any notice of that. So I would be opposed to the amendment and would urge a no to go back to the original effective date of July 1st.
Representative Larson, JT.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So members, it was explained to me or the committee that these provisions, I mean, law enforcement is going to work with the landowners and state agencies surrounding the use of drones. And so if they are flying over critical infrastructure or livestock, that's something that law enforcement will have the flexibility to either press charges for or not. And they're not going to press charges if it's the landowner or the government doing something in the normal courses of their duties. This is for people who have ill intent. And so, and I do think that it is important to make this effective immediately. We have to be able to address this in our county, and this gives law enforcement the tools. So again, I encourage an aye vote on the Standing Committee amendment.
Representative Harrelson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and good to see you in the seat. Glad you could make it. So as I look at this, I guess a question that I have on this, and maybe the committee that brought it, when we have leases on state land, and I mean, obviously state and or federal lands, and someone's flying a drone, and let's say it does spook some animals and they come running out. I don't want to have an unforeseen consequence to this. I understand we shouldn't be harassing animals directly, but I think that there's also a point where, because these lands are leased, is that a concern? I don't know. I'm just, more than anything, let's have the conversation and maybe just see if that came up in committee.
Chairman Heiner.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Members, we had testimony from our Sheriff's Department in Sweetwater County during the hearing of this bill in committee. This is something that's been going on for a few months. These drones, the size of an SUV, are showing up at 2 o'clock in the morning, dark 30, and there's about 20 or 30 smaller drones about the size that you get off of Amazon flying around them. But the SUV size is up there about 5,000 feet over some of the critical infrastructure in Sweetwater County. And this is ongoing. They have recently, it's as recent as just a couple of weeks ago that they've had reports of this, and the deputies go out, but there's nothing they can do. So what this enacting clause being changed to immediate would allow me to go out there with my .50 caliber and help them bring it down. And I offered. I have a little miniature cannon that I built in high school that I'd love to be able to shoot that off. But what it does is it just gives them an opportunity to do some, what are they doing up there? We don't know. Until we find out what they're doing, we're all concerned. You know, is it nefarious or is it something that's valid and legitimate? We don't know. But the longer we wait, if we wait till July, maybe they won't be gone by then. Maybe they'll be back to China or wherever they came from. We don't know where they're coming from. But I think it's something that they're hovering over critical infrastructure, and if it's something bad, we need to find out sooner than later. So if not now, let's not wait till July. Thank you.
Representative Provenza.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So the last speaker said that the drones that are flying at 5,000 feet, this bill can't do anything to them. That is in federal airspace. So we can't, this bill's not going to help with any of that. So the concern that I have about the amendment, and back on the amendment, is that, again, if we make this immediately, the people that you are impacting at the lower levels that aren't flying at 5,000 feet, they use apps when they fly their drones, and maybe they're doing nothing bad, but they're trying to follow laws. And oftentimes the way that they know that they're following the law is their app will tell them. So they're flying their drone. It says that you can fly at this elevation over this portion of land. Those apps can't change overnight. And so the request for me is like, I'm fine with the bill, but can we not do immediately, because there are people that have other reasons to fly drones. Maybe it's for fun, maybe it's for business, whatever. They are following the law. They're trying to follow the law, but they wouldn't know otherwise because those apps can't change the minute we change the law. So that is the concern. And back to that 5,000 feet, there is nothing we can do about that. That's federal airspace. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Representative Larson, JT.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So on the amendment, I think that we have to, that effective immediately is important. And it was testified in committee that if we make this effective immediately, there is going to be some, for the hobby people that aren't really trying to fly over our critical infrastructure or loiter over it. They're not trying to break the law, and our peace officers kind of have a good understanding of that, and they would be flexible once this was implemented. We just want to be able to address the problem that's going on for the people that we believe are doing this nefariously, because we can't even see them come up on those apps. The sheriff's office has that app downloaded on their phone, and those drones are not showing up on the app and on that. So I think, I mean, and we've contacted the FAA and we've contacted all these agencies at the federal level, and we still have not received an answer as to who it is, or at least getting confirmation that, nope, it's us. We don't need to know why you're doing it, but no federal agency has said, nope, it's us. You don't need to worry about it. So it's just really concerning. We got to be able to address this right now. So I encourage an aye vote on the amendment. I'm a little indifferent on the wildlife or livestock, and I know that there were some concerns about having that in there, but I won't divide it at this point unless somebody feels that it's necessary to divide the amendment to vote on the effective date and the wildlife livestock portion separately. So with that, I'll stand for further questions, if not further discussion. So.
Chairman Heiner.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I need to amend my last statement. It was up to 5,000 feet. So they were hovering over the power plant and going, anywhere from a few hundred feet up to 5,000 feet. So the other thing that was brought out, that the FAA could not find they were not showing up on their radar. So that's pretty interesting that they can't see these drones the size of an SUV on a radar. But it is concerning to those of us that worry about our infrastructure and live in the area.
Representative Harrelson.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. So at this time, I would like to divide the amendment.
Go ahead and proceed.
Okay, thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. I would like to have division number 1 to be line 1 through line 5, and division number 2 to be line 7, division 1 through 7, and then division 2, 9 through the end of the amendment. Hold on that for one, Mr. Chairman, sorry, I'm going to hold on that for 1 second. I'm going to read it in real quick, and I'm sorry if you don't mind giving me just a moment.
No, you're fine.
Yeah. So, Mr. Chairman, I'd like to take and amend that division, if you don't mind, Mr. Chairman.
Go ahead, proceed.
Thank you. So division number 1 would be lines 1 through 3 and lines 9 through 13, and division number 2 would be line 5 through 7.
Okay, division 1 would be 1 through 3. Division 2 would be 9 through 13, and division 2 and division 3 would be 4 through 7.
That is correct, Mr. Chairman.
You have to decide if that's full or not.
So there's we're getting this right, and I'm sorry. So it would be lines 1 and 9 through 13 is division number 1, and then lines 3 through 7 is division number 2.
Okay,
I apologize,
Representative
Mr.
Harrelson,
Chairman, I should have had that.
It'd be 2 divisions. 1 would be 9 through 13, and division 2 is 1 through 7.
So it'd be lines 1, Mr. Chairman, and 9 through 13 is division 1. So lines 1 and 9 through 13 is division number 1. And then division number 2 would be line 3 through line 7.
Okay, 3 divisions there. The first 2 divisions. First division will be line 1. Division 2, or also division 1 would be 9 through 13, and division 2 would be 2 through 8. Is that correct?
That is correct, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, it is divisible.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. And if you don't mind, Mr. Chairman, I'll take up division number 2 first. And I think this is a discussion, when I read the bill and look at the text of the bill, it is protecting critical infrastructures and systems from drones. I believe that we are talking a whole different conversation that probably needs a whole lot more conversation when we get into the realm of our Fish and Feathers agency and department that takes care of the crops and the land. We need to have a lot more conversation, I think, than throwing this on, because I think there could be some very unintended consequences. So I would ask for a no on division number 2.
Representative Larson, JT.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I would also encourage a no vote on Division 2. I think that we need to take more time to look at the trespass areas for drones and look at that bill specifically. And so I encourage you to vote no on this division, and then aye on Division 1. So thank you.
Any other discussion on the amendment? Okay, we are going to call for the vote. This is regarding Division 2. Those in favor of the motion, say aye.
All those opposed of division number 2?
Oh, Division number 2, I apologize. That's on me. Those in favor of the Division number 2, please say aye. Aye. Those opposed? No.
Division number 2 has failed.
The motion has failed. We will move on to Division number 1.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So I understand there's concern on division number 1 that we don't have enough time to align this. Honestly, I'm going to leave that up to the will of the body. I just wanted to make sure we didn't go into territory we didn't want to play on. So no pun intended. So with that, I would say, vote your conscience and we can continue to have the conversation on the enacting date. But for me personally, I do understand that that there would have to obviously be some pretty fast upgrades to the software and to the system. So, effective immediately, I think obviously it could have maybe some unintended consequences, but at the same time, we don't probably want to push it all the way out to the 1st of July, which could also create major issues. So I think this is probably just a conversation we need to continue to have. And I think the sooner we can address this issue, the better. We do not want these items over our critical infrastructure.
Representative Riley.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I believe right now a lot of this is already limited. If you look at the title of the bill, it's critical infrastructure. So I don't think there's any harm in doing this immediately, because I think it's common practice already not to have drones flying over all this stuff without some kind of a notification.
Any other discussion on the amendment?
Question being called.
Question to be called. Those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed?
No. That division.
Amendment, the division number 1 has been adopted. So back to Representative Larson, JT.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So members, I bring you Senate File 132. We've already had some discussion on it through the amendment, but basically what we're trying to do under 1913-503 is say no person shall operate or use an unarmed aircraft system, or unmanned, not unarmed, unmanned aircraft system. I guess we should, maybe that might be another amendment. Aircraft system over or near critical infrastructure or a critical system. And then it lays out the specific things that they shouldn't do. So to intentionally photograph critical infrastructure or critical system, to intentionally loiter over or near critical infrastructure or critical system, or in furtherance of any other criminal offense. And so basically, this is protecting the people that are just hobby drone flyers. They're just flying over the railroad tracks or the power plant, but they're not there to hang out. They're just doing their normal course of drone flying and with nothing nefarious going on. And, you know, even if somebody saw a drone fly over and they reported it, that's the responsibility of the law enforcement to kind of determine whether that person was acting with bad intent or not, and if it eventually then also to the court to determine that if it goes that far. But a lot of times they're going to just be loitering over the infrastructure, taking photographs. They're going to be there for a long period of time, and it's going to be obvious that they are there with nefarious intent. And so that's up to the prosecutor as well to kind of gather the facts. And then it goes into no person shall operate a device or over near critical infrastructure or a critical system. And it says the things that it should not apply to. So a person authorized by the Federal Aviation Administration to operate or use unmanned aircraft system, if the person's operation or use complies with the authorization granted or with rules promulgated by the Federal Aviation Administration. And then also a government entity's use of unmanned aircraft system owned by a governmental entity, by use of unmanned aircraft system by the owner or the owner's agent of critical infrastructure or a critical system. So that's if you're a utility and you're doing surveys of your property, like the power plant or their power lines, they're exempt. And then aircraft by law enforcement, EMS, and going on to page 4, hazard material response team, and other agencies in that nature. And then the use of an unmanned aircraft system by a private landowner or property owned by the private landowner. And then it lays out the violation, the sentences that somebody could receive for a first-time offense. It's punishable by imprisonment not to exceed 6 months, and then a fine not to exceed $2,500. A felony punishable by imprisonment for the second or subsequent offense is not to exceed 2 years in prison and a $5,000 fine. And then moves on to what a peace officer can do. Peace officer or law enforcement official may take or authorize the use of reasonable actions to prevent or stop the use of unmanned aircraft systems or model aircrafts operating in violation of this section. For purposes of this subsection, reasonable actions may include disabling, damaging, or removing the unmanned aircraft system or model aircraft from the prohibited location. We also wanted to make sure that our chief executive, and I think I can say the governor because it's in the bill, the governor may order the National Guard of Wyoming to assist in taking or using reasonable actions to prevent or stop the use of unmanned aircraft systems. So just giving tools in the toolbox for our law enforcement and chief executive to use in these situations, because that's a problem we ran into over the last few months. Our chief executive could not really take any action because he was not authorized, and our law enforcement just really didn't have any authorization either. So, and then we go into page 6, a person who operates or uses an unmanned aircraft in a manner that is not lawful under subsection A of this section shall be guilty of a misdemeanor by imprisonment not to exceed 6 months, a fine not to exceed $750 or both. Let's see. Then there's some conforming language, and go on to page 7. And this is where we define in the 1913 501 the definitions of critical system. And it says it means one or more of the following, and it has a long list. I'm not going to go through each one of those, so you can read through those on your own, but it deals with critical infrastructure that may be at risk from a drone flying over and gathering photographs or loitering over them for other data collection. And so kind of goes through that, all of that on all the way through page 9. And then page 10 is the effective date. And so with that, I will stand for any questions, but I encourage you to vote aye on this bill. This really tries to give our law enforcement the tools they need to address this problem in Sweetwater County and other counties. Other counties have experienced drone sightings that have occurred, and one of the things that was testified in the committee was these drones. They were investigated by our law enforcement. Law enforcement gathered the data and drove back to the jail or their office, and the drones followed them all the way back to the office. And so you know that there's some potentially ill intent by these drones, because they probably would not be following law enforcement otherwise if their only mission is to be above that specific piece of infrastructure. So kind of makes the hair stand up on your neck for those things, but encourage you to vote aye on this bill. It really solves a Wyoming problem, and encouraging you to support it. Thanks.
Representative Lawley.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I am on and for this bill. We heard it in the Minerals Committee and heard a lot of good testimony about real issues. And one of the things that struck me was the size of these drones as basically described by law enforcement, and the idea that they're likely being operated outside of Wyoming. The person actually handling and operating the drones are not in Wyoming. And so, again, without more information, without giving tools to law enforcement, we're just going to be subject to this more and more. All of the industry came in favor of this bill. They felt their infrastructure, they are concerned about their infrastructure, and they felt that we had carved out for obviously them to do what they need to do, whether it's pipelines, whether it's utilities that they could do to survey and upkeep their own equipment and property, and they would also sometimes contract with third parties, and all of that's under the bill. Clearly they can do that. They say even now they will sometimes get calls from law enforcement about drones, and they'll confirm that that is being conducted by their company or a third party they've hired to look out for that infrastructure. So every one of the industries came forward and said this would be a good thing. We do feel they're threatened, and we don't really have tools. So again, I'm on and for the bill. I think that it's focused on critical infrastructure, Mr. Chairman, and the fact is that there's a lot this bill doesn't address. And I want to talk about that for a moment because it's intentional. This is a targeted bill about critical infrastructure and about how we will manage this situation with drones in that setting. I have a lot of questions myself about what we need to do in the state, and that we're going to have to develop some policy about use of drones on private lands. Trespass by drone is one way to describe that, but we haven't done that. And this bill doesn't do that. It's not built to do that. But there is a gap there that ultimately we are going to have to look at. What is our policy in Wyoming as something that's these are things that are becoming more and more prevalent. So again, on and for the bill. Thank you.
Representative Provenza.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This conversation might be new to some folks, but it's old news for me. I served on committee number 1 several years ago when we had hours and hours of debate. And so it was complicated. We had several bills come to this floor. Most of them died. And some of the testimony that came up had to do with things like, I think one bill that we did pass actually had to do with infrastructure for corrections facilities. But outside of that, there's a lot of other concerns that come up when we pass laws like this. So one question I had for this was, we have the exceptions in here. I would wonder, what about, one question that came up in committee number 1 a couple years ago was about the press or First Amendment rights. We heard a lot of testimony during that interim that there is a First Amendment concern about limiting where drones can fly in terms of, if the press has a legitimate thing, something is happening that is of public interest, do we want to allow for that? Do they need to go get a permit to do that? When it considered our agency that oversees corrections, there was still concern even in those instances. So I'd wonder about if there was testimony on any of that. The other thing I had a question about was, so we exempt, that we say that this shall not apply to governmental entities' use of unmanned aircraft systems owned by a governmental entity. My question about that is, sometimes we use third-party GIS folks that are doing specific work for government, but they aren't government entities. Would they be able to do that because they are contracted out by, say, a county? That would be another question. And then the question about, the airspace. So we can have regulations on anything under approximately 400 feet. We can't regulate anything higher than that. So I'm wondering if the committee had discussions with people about that airspace, because I don't think maybe you can point out to me in the bill where we clarify which airspace we're trying to regulate, since we can't regulate anything above 500 feet. Those are my questions, Mr. Chairman. Thank you.
Representative Wiley.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Good body. Hundreds of phone calls. Who, what, where, when. Okay? Pass it along. Who, what, where, when. Nothing. 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 That was the answer. Nobody knew. Nobody knows. It's a good bill. Vote aye. Help the counties out.
Representative.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This bill's got me thinking, like the one representative said, these big drones they're being operated outside the state. I mean, Homeland Security needs to be involved in this. What are we gonna have, start arming the police with Vulcans, anti-aircraft guns, Patriot missiles to take these things down? This needs to go through Homeland Security.
Thank you, Representative Stiver. Representative Washut.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So when committee number 1 heard these bills a couple years ago, several things came up. One of which was that under existing federal law, the idea of taking your .50 caliber or whatever else and shooting one of these out of the sky is a federal felony crime for which you would then lose your firearms rights. So my question is, what resources do your sheriff's departments and police departments have to actually enforce this law if we pass it? It seems to me that there's technology available that might be useful, but I doubt many of our local law enforcement agencies have any of that technology. So is the hope that the National Guard's going to come in at the governor's order and they're going to actually be able to do something with this? Or should we be thinking about some type of appropriation to go along with this to allow our agencies who are going to be asked to enforce this law to actually have some tools with which they might be able to effectively do so?
Representative Yin.
Mr. Chairman, thank you. So members, I'd like to bring this a little down to earth. So when you describe a drone as big as an SUV, if I didn't know that unmanned aerial aircrafts even existed, I probably would consider this a UFO sighting. I would like to see what a picture of one of these drones looked like. The policy, I think, is relatively reasonable. I think we've heard that there are various concerns. I'm curious on whether this was near the intergalactic spaceport that is where the river is green. I know that there is one of those in Sweetwater County. The issue around adding a felony, always concerning to me. The carve-out is relatively broad, so I'm actually fairly comfortable with that portion. The one worry I do have is on page 2, lines 12 and 13, about intentionally photographing critical infrastructure. If I did this from the ground, I think I would still legally be able to do that. So it's odd that we would make that a misdemeanor and then a felony on the second offense to do it from the air. So curious on whether there was discussion around that portion. Loitering, I get it. But I do want to know more about whether something the size of an SUV is even an unmanned aircraft. Could that even just be a helicopter? Would this bill cover it? And I think the chairman of judiciary has a very good question. If we heard who, what, when, where, how are they going to find out? I mean, other than just taking a picture of it, they can't shoot it down with this bill. What is the bill going to actually do? Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Representative Larson, JT.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And before I came to session, I was serious about coming to session to put an amendment in the budget or even in this bill to have the state buy an F-16. I even Googled how much an F-16 was, and that probably got me on a list. So, but you know, I think that the point about an appropriation is actually a valid point. I know that of some equipment that they can use that is not like a bullet or a missile or whatever, that like a net that you can drop over them and it pulls it down. You can also, there's also, I've seen online, and I don't know if it's real or if it was fake, but like a radar gun that like disrupts their signals so that they come down to the ground. So that's also an option. I would be happy to entertain an amendment anywhere from $100,000 to $16 million, if you're wondering. But anyways, I think that we have a duty as state government to protect our people, and we have a duty to make sure that they know that they are going to be secure and safe on a day-to-day basis. That should be a reasonable expectation from our citizens and the businesses that choose to operate in our state. And I think that I think we'd be open to further discussion on amendments moving forward that may enhance this bill, and be happy to work with people to address some of the concerns that have been brought up, and look forward to those discussions, and also working with the sponsor from down the hall as well. I want to make sure we involve the sponsor on that as well. So thanks so much for the discussion, and I'll stand for further questions.
Chairman Brown, Landon.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. My question is actually going to be an appropriation for, our Attorney General. And are we going to provide a liability protection to anybody who decides that they're going to shoot one of these down? And let's just say that, they were operating clearly and we damage one of these multi-million-dollar devices. Who's going to pay for that if it gets dropped and it's a big net and it falls down and they decide to sue said sheriff's department? Then I also get to thinking about who pulled the trigger. Are they then liable personally for doing something along these lines? Maybe we need to have a multi-million-dollar pot of money sitting aside for liability on something like this, because the last I heard was these drones that were being operated were DOD. And if we had DOD stuff over there, I sure as heck don't think we should be authorizing any of that kind of stuff to be taken down. And if we do, I'm fairly certain our big brother out there and wherever that base may be coming from, we might be having some full birds and some stars coming after us telling us, what in the world are you doing? So I'm just not convinced that this is a good piece of policy. It makes us feel good. Makes us feel good. Don't get me wrong. I didn't field those calls, ladies and gentlemen. I wasn't getting those calls like these individuals were. But I think we're treading very, very cautiously into some quicksand, and we can get caught really, really quick. So I don't disagree. Maybe we can work on making some bills, make this bill a little bit better. I don't think we need to kill it, but I do think there's some serious liability questions on what happens to the individual that may be taking one of these down, and then also at the department level, who's going to take care of that.
Representative Larson, JT.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Again, happy to work with people on addressing some of the concerns, and encourage you to vote this bill through Committee of the Whole. It is important for multiple communities in our state who have seen these drones over our facilities. And my last comment, unless there's further discussion, would be just imagine one of those birds in the air with a big old steamboat on the side of it. That would be pretty great, right? So maybe have it fly over every UW football game as well. So that would be great. So anyways, encourage an aye vote on the bill. Definitely want to have further discussion and make this bill protect our law enforcement for any liability that they may run into, and support the bill. So thanks.
Are we ready for the question? Question being called. All those in favor of Chairman Heiner's motion that when the Committee of the Whole rises to report, it does so with the recommendation that Senate File 132 do pass. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Those opposed, no.
No.
Motion passes. Senate File 132 is passed the committee as a whole. The next bill for consideration is Senate File 153. The reading clerk will read the bill.
Senate File 153, sponsored by Senator Barlow, residential real property, taxable value, and act related to taxation and revenue. Mr. Speaker, your Committee Number 3 Revenue, to whom is referred Senate File 153 engrossed, residential real property, taxable value, respect the report, same back to the House with the recommendation to do pass with the following amendments. Ayes, Representatives Brown, Campbell, Lean, Locke, Lucas, Storer, Stivar, Wharf. Excuse, Representative Riggins. Representative Locke, Chairman.
You've heard the reading of the bill. What is your pleasure, Chairman Locke?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I move that when the Committee of the Whole rises to report, it do so with the recommendation that Senate File 153 do pass. Let's see here. And I further remove the adoption of the Standing Committee amendment. And I believe the representative from my current district will do the Standing Committee amendment, and the representative from the County of Cole will actually go over the bill.
Representative Lynn. Representative Closton.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I will go over the bill with everyone. This is Senate File 153. Ladies and gentlemen, in November of 24, during the general election, Wyoming voters approved Constitutional Amendment A, which modifies our state's property tax structures. This introduced residential real property as a distinct fourth class of property tax in Wyoming. It empowered our Wyoming legislature to create a subclass specifically for owner-occupied primary residences. This bill does exactly that. It's consistent with the amendment that was passed by our voters, and it establishes the fourth class.
Representative Lim.
Thank you, Chairman. Let's see. I move Committee of a Whole Amendment Number 1, or Standing Committee Amendment, to Senate File 153. This amendment just moves page 2, line 11. It deletes 9.5% and makes it 8.3%. This is as low as we can possibly go for the residential property within our tax structure via constitutional code. And then furthermore, on page 2, line 22, it inserts, unless the owner is an active duty member of the armed forces who is deployed outside the states, outside the state, we put in the residential requirement of 8 months on line 21. And then again on page 3, line 19, we moved that to 9.5%. So there would be, the tax structure would then go industrial is 11.5, residential would come in at 8.3.
Any further discussion on the amendment? Representative Harshman.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. On and for the amendment and for the bill, members, as a good representative from Campbell County said, this bill is allowed by the vote of our people. We really need to pass this bill to conform the language in our statutes with now the language in the Constitution. And this standing committee amendment, and there are 2 other amendments that I think help this, or I think are complementary to the amendment, is really, and we've been talking about property tax reform all this time, it's about those 3 levers. And we have the constitutional cap on mills. Locals can't just raise mill levies. We have a statutory cap now on increases. That's capped at 4%. That's huge. And this is the 3rd and final lever to reduce really the assessment level from 9.5% to 8.3%. And why that can only go to 8.3%, because our Constitution also says that all of these rates for the classes of property, and now we have 4, we have industrial, and we have commercial and residential, and I should say the all other is commercial, ag, and then now residential, 3 classes. They all have to be within 40% of each other. And that's really, you think about the folks who put that in the Constitution, it was designed to protect all of those classes, to kind of keep them close. So we couldn't say, hey, Wyoming, we're just going to raise industrial to 25%. And we're going to, raise commercial to a higher amount. So we keep these, and that's why the 8.3 number, because the highest rate we have of assessment is the industrial level at 11.5%. So it's about how much has gone from 9.5 to 8.3 in this amendment? It's about a 14% tax cut. That's a big deal. And it'll be about $80 to $90 million tax reduction statewide, counting all mills. There is an owner occupied, I think is really important. That'll reduce that some, I think. Probably 10, 15 million, maybe it's down to a cost of 70. We'll probably get the numbers on that more. We don't exactly know. We estimate that to be about 25% or non-owner occupied. Really a good amendment, really good bill. And so appreciate further conversation and consideration of the further amendments. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Any further discussion on the amendment? Seeing none, are you ready for the question? Question being called. All those in favor of Standing Committee Amendment Number 1, say aye. Aye. Those opposed, no. The Standing Committee Amendment Number 1 has been adopted. We are back on the bill and the amendments. The next amendment is Representative Harshman.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman, I would move Committee of the Whole Amendment Number 1 to Senate File 153. And members, if you have those amendments in front of you, this keeps the current standing committee amendment that we just passed for the 8 months and for the military members and the 8.3%. The thing that adds to the definition is it's owner occupied 8.3% up to $5 million. And then the amount over 5 million would be at our current rate of 9.5. So that's really it. It's only going to be a small fraction of homes. I think the highest assessed value home, and I don't know if it's owner occupied, is right at 700 million. I haven't heard a lot about tax cuts. Those folks, reaching out to me on tax cuts. So I push the boundaries, I think, of this definition, but I think it's an important debate to have. And again, this will, like the Standing Committee Amendment, take place in 2025 tax year, even though we don't have all the information on owner occupied yet. We really won't have that for another year. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Chairman Locke.
Thank you, Mr.
Representative
Chairman.
Chesnick.
On and against the amendment, I do thank the bringer of the amendment. I think it's a pretty good amendment, and I don't disagree with his approach. There's just two things with this amendment that just need to be tweaked. Number one, implementation of the 8.3 on the owner occupied just needs to really be moved out to next year. There's some logistics of making it happen in the current year that the DOR may have. The only other issue I have with this amendment is, and I guess this is really, what does this body want to do? I was hoping this amendment was kind of equally applied. I understand the cap, the $5 million cap in there. That being said, I'm not necessarily in favor of that. I'd rather there not be a cap and we applied it more consistently across all our homes. So it's not that I dislike the amendment. I think it's going in the right direction, but on and against the amendment for us, maybe tweaking the approach we implement this a little bit better.
Representative Chesnick.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And I admit I just saw this amendment just now, so I haven't had a chance to do any research or look at the law about this or the constitutional amendment. I wonder, though, has the bringer thought of the potential constitutional problems of treating property of the same class differently? The point of the constitutional amendment was to create a new class of property and tax this new class differently than other classes, and now that's constitutional because of the amendment. But within the class of residential property, treating some properties differently than others within the class, I think might be constitutionally suspect. So have you thought about that, and what is your response?
Representative Yin.
Mr. Chairman, thank you. So I think the good bringer of the amendment was very unique with this by defining the class in a way where you're not treating things outside the class differently. You're just calling something in the class versus in the not owner-occupied class. We define what that language means. So I think the question could be brought up by someone who is a very wealthy landowner or a very land-rich person to determine whether that class is not defined according to the Constitution. Regardless, what I want to say is that I am on and for the amendment. I think the policy question that we're asking here is the same as the one that we asked in our previous tax bills about occupied versus not occupied. There are tweaks that I would like to do, and so I'll bring them on second reading. I think the tweak about moving this portion to the second year is a good tweak to do, but I think that we should still accept the policy as is on the first reading, or committee of the whole, and then fix it on second reading, knowing that we have, as a body, accepted that we think we should treat owner occupied differently than not.
Representative Harshman.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just a little more information. The good chairman of Revenue, we adopted the standing committee amendment. It starts in 2025. And we had a sidebar conversation, so he had mentioned to not vote for mine because we got to clean it up for 2026. That's not the issue. And we have a second reading, or committee of the whole amendment number 2, I should say, amendment that actually cleans up that 25, 26. But the 25 problem, we just adopted in the standing committee amendment. Committee of the whole amendment number 2 will fix both of these amendments. Now, back to the definition, yes, we can have, and really it gives us the ability to have these two classes. So we're going to have the owner occupied class and the non-owner occupied class, people who have just a second home here. And that the constitutional language allowed us to do that. Now, what is the definition of owner occupied? This amendment says 8 months, unless you're a military member, and the value of 8.3 up to $5 million. That's part of the definition. So that's part of the debate, and I think that's, I think it was a really interesting and delicate and intricate way to do it. And so I'd hope you'd support it. And then I think, so I guess I'd like to see the body adopt all 3 of these amendments. They're written in order, and I think they're going to work really nicely together. Committee of the whole amendment number 2 will correct the 25-year issue that our clerks and assessors are having a little issue with. Stand for any questions.
Is there any further discussion on the amendment? Seeing none, are you ready for the question? Question being called. All those in favor of standing committee amendment number 2, please say aye. Aye. Those opposed, no. No. Amendment number 2 has been adopted.
Division.
Committee of the whole, amendment number 1.
Division.
So it's, you need to say, you need to call it committee of the whole amendment. So it's committee of the whole amendment number 1. Okay, so say that. Actually,
We are now in the committee of the whole amendment number 2?
No.
Number 1.
Hold on.
Call division. Those
So
Okay, all those in favor of committee as a whole amendment number 1, please stand.
thank you. Yes. Hit the gavel. Committee of the whole amendment number 1. All those opposed?
You may sit. All those opposed to the amendment for Committee as a Whole Amendment Number 1, please stand. You may sit. Amendment number 1 has failed, 18 to 33. The next amendment is Representative Harshman. Oh, Williams, sorry. Representative Williams.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I move Committee of the Whole Amendment Number 2 to Senate File 153. Over the past year, or maybe it's just been a month, we've spoken at length regarding the 3 property tax levers that can be adjusted. 2, that the legislature adjusts, assessment, which we've discussed at length, and the rate. And of course, the 3rd, which is the levy, or the mills that the local governments adjust. But this bill, like we've heard, and this amendment deal with the rate lever, and this bill establishes the 4th class that our citizens asked us to establish when they passed Amendment A. And this amendment further clarifies adjusting that rate like we've been discussing. Our assessors cannot identify owner-occupied this year, but they can next year. This amendment lowers the owner-occupied property tax rate as much as we can without adjusting industrial tax rates, as fast as we can, which is next year. And so there, if we look at that amendment, it adjusts that rate with the following language. If you look at page 2, line 7, residential, line 9, for tax year 2025, residential real property, including owner-occupied primary residences, 9.5%, which is no change for this year. And there may be an amendment in the next couple readings to address that. And then on line 13, for tax year 2026 and thereafter, residential real property, 9.5%, and owner-occupied primary residences, 8.3%. Look forward to any discussion. Encourage an aye vote. Thank you.
Representative Lynn.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. There's only one piece of this amendment that I don't like, and that's the 9.5 for this year, because I think people deserve for that to come down. I'm happy to run that amendment. I'll go get it drafted. But otherwise, this is just adding a subclass to our 4th category, and I think that that's great structure. I thank the bringer of the amendment and look forward to an aye vote.
Is there any other discussion on the amendment? Seeing none, are you ready for the question? Question being called. All those in favor of standing amendment, committee amendment number 2, say aye. Aye. Those opposed, no. The standing committee amendment number 2 has been adopted. Now we are back on the bill.
Committee of the whole. Committee of the whole. You have to say committee of the whole.
Oh, the whole amendment, apologize, whole amendment number 2. Now we are back on the bill.
Question?
Chairman Locke.
Question being called.
Okay, the question is being called. Those in favor of Senate file number 153, please say aye. Aye. Those opposed, no. Senate Bill 153, Senate File 153 has passed the committee as a whole.
The next bill.
The next bill is Senate File 147. Chairman Winter.
Senate File 147, sponsored by Senator Hutchings, Service Dogs, Training and Crimes, an act relating to the protection and rights of blind and disabled persons. Mr. Speaker, your Committee Number 5, Agriculture, State and Public Lands and Water Resources, to whom is referred Senate File 147, Service Dogs, Training and Crimes, respectfully report same back to the House with the recommendation that do pass with the following amendments. Ayes, Representatives Banks, Davis, Eklund, Johnson, Ottman, Provenza, Schmid, Strzok. Noes, Representative Winter. Representative Winter, Chairman.
You have heard the reading of the bill. What is your pleasure, Chairman Winter?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Folks, I'm going to follow the script here, but you should know that I was the only no vote in the committee. So, but I'm going to go through the process, and then we'll talk about it later. So I move that when the committee of the whole rises to report, it do so with the recommendation that bill number 147 do pass, and I further move the adoption of the standing committee amendment. And there's the reason I voted against it was because I did not feel that the presenter was that serious about passing it this year, because she kept saying that she would work with them for a bill next year. So
Point of order.
What is your point? So, Representative Provenza.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just, we don't say anything about the intent or anything of the bringer of the bill. Just stick to the bill itself and the ideas. Thank you.
okay, well, thank you.
Representative Bear.
I'm just going to object to the point of order. We often discuss what happened in committee so that the body can understand what happened in committee. So I object to the objection.
Representative Strzok.
Thank you, Chairman. So what the amendment was just to, I want to move this amendment, and it was to make this act effective immediately after it's signed. That was. So what this bill really entails here is, the bill updates some current statutes which haven't been touched on the topic since 1977. So it's about service dogs and training and crimes. It's what they have. So we had a lot of the testimony and the people that came in. We've got service dogs that are in training, that there are some companies that will not allow them to bring the dogs into these certain companies. And what this bill was, just to make sure when the service dogs are in training, they can come into some of the different establishments. And partly and then that was the first bit of it. And then on the other end, they just wanted to raise the fines it was in the end, it was a misdemeanor, was punishable by imprisonment for not more than 6 months, and they changed it to less than 1 year, and a fine of not more than $750, but was moved to $5,000 or both. And that was the fine if anyone knowingly, willfully, or without lawful cause of inflicts or permits or directs any animal under his control or ownership to inflict or seriously bodily harm one of these service animals that were in training. So that's what the fine was for, was if anyone intentionally or their animal intentionally hurts one of these animals that are in training. So that was the extent of the bill, was just to do that. So, any question, I guess? Oh, I am so sorry. I am so sorry. The amendment, we need to vote on the amendment. Sorry.
Question being called. All those in favor of amendment number 1? Question being called. All those in favor of standing committee amendment number 1, say aye. Aye. Those opposed, no. The standing committee amendment number 1 has been adopted. Now we are back on the bill. Representative Sherwood.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm wondering if during testimony you heard any conversations regarding service dogs versus ESA, an emotional support animal, and how those two are treated different or the same in the current statute.
Representative Strzok.
Thank you, Chairman. If I remember right, this was not dealing with the emotional animals in train, for the emotional end of it, if I remember correctly. This was mostly for the ones with your disability and the dogs for the hearing and physical and blind, more than the emotional. Maybe I'm.
Representative Provenza. Okay, Representative Ottman.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just to add to that, on page 2 of the bill, it adds to the idea of a service animal that shall include a dog that is being trained to do work or perform tasks for the benefit of an individual with a disability. So it adds dog to that definition. And also, up there a little earlier, there are emotional support dogs and animals and things like that. So this is a different category, and that's why this bill is here. This is for dogs in training. These dogs are chosen and trained specifically to help people with disabilities, to go into public places, to be able to walk up and down the street, to be able to do stairs, to be able to go in a post office, to be around the public in general. So it's to help people that have a disability to be able to go out into the public and do those things that they couldn't do by themselves. On and for the bill.
Representative Provenza.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So when you look at the statute, this does also include emotional support animals. There was not testimony necessarily from folks on whether that was good or bad. There was concern about, or I guess one thing that came up was that what happens then is that if an animal is not trained yet, they're in training, they can go into a private business and the private business can't turn them away. So that's kind of the impetus of the bill. So there wasn't a lot of pushback in committee. One thing I will point out in conversation that I had with the committee and brought amendment to in committee but didn't pass was the concern about the increase in the fine. Because one of the conversations was that the example given was that dogs were yipping at service animal dogs' ankles and biting them, and that these dogs are worth a lot of money and there's concerns about harming them. But what they testified to was that no one has been prosecuted under the current law. So currently under law, your dog can't harass or hurt a service animal. Like if you sick your dog on another dog, then you are guilty of a misdemeanor. That's already in law. This bill adds, and it doesn't make it a felony, but it brings $5,000 fine with it and goes up to a year in jail. I tried to bring an amendment to pull that out, and I probably will bring that in second reading because I think given that it is not prosecuted right now, my concern is if you increase that penalty, then prosecutors are not going to prosecute it then either. We've heard from prosecutors before in other sections of law that if you make the penalty too steep, then they're reluctant to use it. So I don't think it does any benefit to the bill or the people that are impacted by increasing that fine from $750 to $5,000. I also think it makes it maybe not congruent with the rest of law. So you can expect to see that from me on second reading. But that was some of the testimony, and folks didn't, have a ton of heartburn on that. But to answer your question, the emotional support is still included in this. So you have to make a policy decision about whether that you are willing to tell private businesses that they have to allow this.
Representative Sherwood.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker and body. I bet you didn't think we were going to spend this much time on this bill. But one of my hobbies is actually dog training. So I do know that there is nuance between these two categories, and I'm sensitive to when we're telling a business you have to or you shall, right? So an emotional support animal requires no training. They come that way. They come prepared to be our best friends, our pets, our companions, and they don't need a certification or training. I love my emotional support animals, by the way. But a service dog is trained multiple hours, typically to do at least 3 jobs for the owner who has a disability. So that animal is assisting that owner with a disability. So the part of the bill that I think is great is it opens up the flexibility of where you can train that dog in real life scenarios. I still think best practice is as the trainer to go in and just ask the business owner, hey, can I come in and do some exercises with this dog at a time that wouldn't be disruptive to you, your staff, or the public? And we're small state, we all know each other, just have that conversation and ask. I think most business owners would be, accommodating and be interested in what that training looked like. But what the bill does is say that if you're training, quote unquote, training an emotional support animal, so my Hellion, who's 10 months old and has no manners, I could say to that business owner, you have to let me in with this dog, it's my emotional support animal, and heck if it's not trained yet, heck if it pees on the floor, doesn't matter, this law protects that. I think that's not what I think is intended, but because currently our laws interweave both of these categories, it's messier than what we realized. So that's just some information there for your consideration on how we move forward with this bill. The other thing I actually like is that the fine does go up and it does include my emotional support animal. So that $5,000 fine now applies to every single one of our pets because you can classify them as an emotional support animal. Easy, you go online, print out a certificate, and you're done. There you go.
Chairman Brown Landon.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Anybody awake? Got a few. All right. So ladies and gentlemen, the language that you see in the bill that's in black print, that's my bill from 2017. That was my very first piece of legislation I ever ran in this body. I used to have a little dog that sat on my desk from a good lobbyist that helped me carry this bill through the process, kind of guided me through it. And then I had a good member of this body who brought in a dinosaur and put the dog in the dinosaur's mouth, and I no longer bring that to this body. So why did I tell you that story? Well, try to get you guys to listen to me a little bit. But second of all, the good minority caucus dog trainer is exactly right. When we put in emotional support animal, ladies and gentlemen, we open this door way too wide. So if you look at the definitions that are in here and that are in black, they're not in red, it's CFR code, right? And why did we do that back in 2017? Because those are the only animals that are given protection by federal law. We cannot provide protection at a state level for a service animal and call them a service animal in our deal. That's why you see the claim of emotional support animal. So when you have an emotional support animal, the problem with that is they are not trained to do a task. That is the defining characteristics of a service animal. It is trained to do a task. Now, can an emotional support animal be a service animal? Yes. Can a service animal, or can an emotional support animal also not be that? Absolutely. So I'm sure every single one of you has gone to your favorite restaurant and seen the woman or the man carrying their little pocket dog with a vest that says, "This is my emotional support animal." So my story about 2017 is the good co-sponsor that carried this on the Senate side, his wife actually had one of those dogs. And she was mad at her husband for carrying that bill on the Senate side because it means she could no longer carry her dog into dinner with her. She used to sit there and claim all the time, well, this is my emotional support animal. She was no longer allowed to do that when that bill went into place. If we adopt this bill the way that it is written, I will bring a second reading amendment to clean it up and make sure that it is taken care of correctly. This is something that is extremely near and dear to my heart. I have worked with a nonprofit here in this community that has done nothing but work and focus on this area. We do not want to screw this up. This is a very, very big issue for those people who do call their animals service animals. When you have an untrained animal come into a grocery store or into a restaurant and it is not trained and it interferes with with a service animal, that causes problems. And that can be a major, major issue, especially for those that have medical conditions that we're worried about. So I'll clean this up. I certainly appreciate the Minority Caucus Chairwoman bringing this in. I certainly love this bill. I think that increasing the fines is extremely needed. But we'll clean this up, vote aye on this bill, and we'll get it fixed in second reading.
Is there any further discussion on the bill? Are you ready for the question? Question being called. All those in favor of Chairman Winter's motion that when the Committee of the Whole rises to report, it does so with the recommendation that House Bill 147 do pass. All those in favor say aye. Those opposed, no.
You have to say Senate File 147. You have to say Senate File 147.
Did it pass? Okay, I apologize. I had to mention Senate File 147, not House Bill. I was reading off the script, sorry. House Bill, Senate Bill 147 has passed the Committee of the Whole. The next bill for our consideration is House Bill, Senate File 9.
Senate File 9, sponsored by Judiciary, Restoration of Rights Amendments, an act relating to criminal procedure. Mr. Speaker, your Committee Number 1 Judiciary, to whom is referred Senate File 9 engrossed, Restoration of Rights Amendments, respectfully report same back to the House with the recommendation that do pass. Ayes, Representatives Brady, Bratton, Chestick, Filer, Kelly, Lean, Singh, Washit, Webb. Representative Washit, Chairman.
You have heard the reading of the bill. What is your pleasure, Chairman Washoe?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I move that when the Committee of the Whole rises to report, to do so with the recommendation that Senate File 9 do pass, and I turn over explanation of this fine bill to the fine representative from County Number 2.
Representative Singh.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and everyone. This is Senate File 9, and this is a continuation of the work that we started in the 67th legislature on the topic of the restoration of rights. And so there are 2 sections to this bill. It goes over 3 different sections of statute. When we're talking about the restoration of rights, the rights that we're talking about primarily are your right to serve in a jury, your right to vote, and your right to own a firearm. And so since we've implemented this original version of the bill, we've seen a couple of hiccups, and the purpose of this bill is to fix those things. So in section 1 on page 2, the first paragraph there from lines 4 to 9 talk about how a convicted felon can receive a pardon to their rights from the governor, can have their rights restored to serve on a jury. The second set of statute, and this is a longer set. It goes from the middle of page 2 on line 11 to, oh man, page 9. It talks about how this is specific to the laws of the state of Wyoming. And so if someone were to commit a nonviolent felony in another state, that it would not necessarily, they would not necessarily get their rights in that state back based off of Wyoming law, that with the implementation of this new law that we created. And so a lot of it's a lot of different pages, but most of the changes are actually just inserting that conforming language specifically on, and references to that conforming language starting on page 7. And on page 7, lines 8 through 11, we notify the Federal Bureau, a change that we make is we notify the Federal Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, Firearms, and Explosives. So we're making sure that we get that agency's name right. And then the big changes happen on the end of page 7 on line 19, section H there. And on continuing on to the next page on section J. I'll just go ahead and read those. So it says, you'll file a copy of the certificate with the Secretary of State. Notify the Division of a Criminal Investigation upon conviction of a new felony under the laws of the state of Wyoming, the laws of another state or federal law, on or after the date of a certificate of restoration of rights is issued under this section. The certificate shall automatically be void, and all rights that were deemed restored by the certificate shall no longer be deemed restored. And then continuing on to paragraph J there, it says, a person shall only be eligible for a certificate of restoration of rights under this section as follows. First is under subsection A of this section, if the person was convicted of a felony under the laws of the state of Wyoming or another state. 2, for purposes of the restoration of rights to possess a firearm. Under subsection F of this section, if the person was convicted of a nonviolent felony or nonviolent felonies arising out of the same occurrence or related course of events under the laws of the state of Wyoming. And then number 3, under subsections B and C of this section, if the person was convicted of a nonviolent felony or nonviolent felonies arising out of the same occurrence or related course of events under the laws of the state of Wyoming or another state. And then on the last page, on page 9, all it does, it strikes the word voting because there are more rights that would be applicable than just voting, and it just references all of their rights. And so that is what the bill does. It's cleanup work from previous legislation that we poured our hearts into last in the 67th legislature. I was very proud to vote for that legislation when we were working on it last time, and I'm happy to see that we're making this a little bit better. So I ask for your aye vote.
Any further discussion on the bill? Representative Provenza.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just want to say in support of this bill, I was one of the sponsors of the original bill that restored gun rights for nonviolent felons. And unfortunately, and I've talked about this on the floor, we've seen that someone has been arrested because we probably shouldn't have given them their rights back under the federal law. This is a cleanup for that. This provides the restoration of rights for the people that we can restore them to. So I would appreciate your favorable vote, and thank you.
Any other discussion on the bill? Are you ready for the question? Question being called. All those in favor of Chairman Washat's motion that when the Committee of the Whole rises to report, it does so with the recommendation that Senate File 9 do pass. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Those opposed, no. Senate File Bill number 9 has passed the Committee of the Whole. The next bill for consideration is
Mr. Chairman.
Chairman Heiner.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I move that the Committee of the Whole rise and report.
You say, you have heard the motion. You say, you have heard the motion. All those in favor? Okay. Go ahead. What does it say? You have heard the motion. All those in favor say aye.
You've heard the motion. All those in favor say aye.
Those opposed, no.
Those opposed?
Motion passes.
Motion passes.
Okay, you're gonna go right down there and stand at that other
Okay.
restaurant, and then you'll have a little bit to show.
Reading clerk, please read the roll.
Mr. Speaker, your Committee of the Whole, having had under consideration bills on general file, begs leave to report as follows. Senate File 132, do pass amended. Senate File 153, do pass amended. Senate File 147, do pass amended. Senate File 9, do pass. Representative Posey, Chairman.
Representative Posey.
Mr. Speaker, I move the adoption of the Committee of the Whole report.
You have heard the motion. All those in favor signify by saying aye. All those opposed, no. Motion passes. Congratulations, Representative Posey. Well done. All right, reports from standing committees.
Senate Joint Resolution 7, sponsored by Senator Pappas. NCSL 50th Anniversary, a joint resolution to recognize and commend the National Conference of State Legislatures on the 50th anniversary of its founding in 2025. Mr. Speaker, your Committee Number 8, Transportation, Highways, and Military Affairs, to whom is referred Senate Joint Resolution 7, NCSL 50th Anniversary, respect the report, same back to the House with the recommendation that it do pass. Ayes. Representatives Banks, Brown, Geringer, Larson, McCann, Nicholas, Posey, Tarver, Wiley. Representative Brown, Chairman. Senate File 24, sponsored by Senator Barlow. Special license plates for multi-purpose vehicles, an act relating to motor vehicle registration. Mr. Speaker, your Committee Number 8, Transportation, Highways, and Military Affairs, to whom is referred Senate File 24, engrossed, special license plates for multi-purpose vehicles. Respect the report, same back to the House with the recommendation that do pass. Ayes. Representatives Banks, Brown, Geringer, Larson, McCann, Nicholas, Posey, Tarver, Wiley. Representative Brown, Chairman. Senate File 171, sponsored by Senator Nethercott, City and Town Regulatory Reduction, an act relating to cities and towns. Mr. Speaker, your Committee Number 6, Travel, Recreation, Wildlife, and Cultural Resources, to whom is referred Senate File 171. city and town regulatory reduction. Respect the report, same back to the House with the recommendation of due pass. Ayes. Representatives Byron, Campbell, Connolly, Harshman, Jarvis, Provenza, Storer, Thayer, Wharf. Representative Byron, Chairman.
Messages from the Senate, please.
Message 256. Mr. Speaker, the Senate did vote to recede from non-concurrence on House amendments to the bill listed below by the vote indicated. Senate File 33, non-citizen driver's license and ID card revisions. Ayes 28, noes 3. Sincerely, Ellen Thompson, Senate Chief Clerk.
Thank you, Reading Clerk. Ladies and gentlemen, we are at that order of business of signing of enrolled acts. We're starting to get more of them gathered up here. First enrolled act for our consideration, Senate File Enrolled Act number 32.
Senate Enrolled Act 32, being original Senate File 33. An act relating to motor vehicles, specifying requirements for driver's licenses and identification cards issued to the person who is not a United States citizen, but who is lawful alien status as recognized by federal law. Specifying applicability, requiring rulemaking, and providing for an effective dates, being enacted by the legislature of the state of Wyoming.
I am about to sign Senate Enrolled Act number 32, having been original Senate File 33. I have so signed. Next Enrolled Act 33.
Senate Enrolled Act 33, being original Senate File 7. An act relating to stalking, sexual assault, and domestic violence protection orders, amending provisions regarding the appointment of counsel, amending filing, services, and notice requirements for protection orders, authorizing orders and extending protection orders to be served upon the respondent by mail as specified, specifying who may file a petition on behalf of the victim of domestic abuse, amending definitions, specifying applicability, and providing for an effective date, being enacted by the legislature of the state of Wyoming.
I am about to sign Enrolled Act number 33, being formally Senate File number 7. I have so signed. Next Senate Enrolled Act number 34.
Senate Enrolled Act 34, being original Senate File 8. An act relating to protection orders, specifying the applicability of stalking, sexual assault, and domestic violence protection orders during appeal or review, and providing for an effective date, being enacted by the legislature of the state of Wyoming.
I am about to sign Enrolled Act number 34, having been original Senate File number 8. I have so signed. Next Enrolled Act 35.
Senate Enrolled Act 35, being original Senate File 79. An act relating to civil procedure, providing a process for a change of venue in district court, and providing for an effective date, being enacted by the legislature of the state of Wyoming.
I am about to sign Enrolled Act number 35, having been original Senate File number 79. I have so signed. Next Enrolled Act 36.
Senate Enrolled Act 36, being original Senate File 110. An act modifying the Wyoming Governmental Claims Act to include crossing guard volunteers and faculty, and providing for an effective date, being enacted by the legislature of the state of Wyoming.
I am about to sign Enrolled Act number 36, having been original Senate File number 110. I have so signed. Next Enrolled Act 37.
Senate Enrolled Act 37, being original Senate File 137. An act relating to school finance, extending the sunset date for an increase in school district operating balances and cash reserves, and providing for an effective date, being enacted by the legislature of the state of Wyoming.
I am about to sign Enrolled Act number 37, having been original Senate File number 137. I have so signed. Next Enrolled Act number 38.
Senate Enrolled Act 38, being original Senate File 179. An act relating to sage grouse implementation and mitigation credits, specifying that operator-offered mitigation measures may be used and approved to address impacts to greater sage grouse habitat, specifying that eminent domain shall not be used to provide for mitigation activities, requiring rulemaking and providing for an effective date, being enacted by the legislature of the state of Wyoming.
I am about to sign Enrolled Act number 38, having been original Senate File number 179. I have so signed. Next and last Enrolled Act at this time is Senate Enrolled Act number 39.
Senate Enrolled Act 39, being original Senate File 181. An act relating to eminent domain, limiting the exercise of the power of condemnation for energy collection systems, providing compensation standards for condemned property as specified, requiring proof of compliance and notice of condemnation as specified, providing requirements for existing easements, providing definitions, making conforming amendments, repealing an existing provision, specifying applicability, and providing for an effective date, being enacted by the legislature of the state of Wyoming.
I'm about to sign Enrolled Act number 39, having been original Senate File 181. I have so signed. All right, ladies and gentlemen, the messages from the senator done. That clears the deck. Let's see, do we have, oh, we have a referral? We have some referrals? Representative, oh, there he is, Representative Bear. And then this shall clear the deck, I trust.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I re-refer Senate File 91 from House Appropriations Committee number 2 to House Travel Committee number 6.
Thank you, Representative Bear. Any other committee announcements? Representative Knapp. Chairman Knapp.
Mr. Speaker, thank you. Your Corporations Committee number 7 will meet Wednesday, February 26th, upon noon recess to hear bills. Senate File 95, Senate File 55 engrossed, Senate File 107 engrossed, Senate File 57. And we will also meet upon adjournment to hear Senate File 190 engrossed, Senate File 174, Senate File 172.
Thank you, Chairman Knapp. Chairman Rodriguez-Williams.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Your committee number 10 will meet Wednesday morning at 7 a.m. in room 3. We'll hear 3 bills. We'll start with Senate File 157, Department of Family Services confidentiality amendments. Move on to Senate File 175, unemployment insurance coverage period end reporting. And then Senate File 155, international physicians licensing. The committee will meet upon adjournment if necessary.
Thank you, Chairman Williams. Chairman Byron.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Committee number 6, Travel, Recreation, Wildlife, Culture Resources will meet tomorrow upon noon recess with our friends down the hallway to discuss interim topics in the historic Supreme Court chamber.
Chairman Bear.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Your committee number 2 has changed its meeting for tomorrow from noon to 8 a.m. Your committee number 2 will be meeting tomorrow, Wednesday, February 26th at 8 a.m. to finish our discussion on Senate File 196, Second Amendment Protection Act amendments, and hopefully to take up Senate File 34, school finance routine and major maintenance calculations, and any re-referrals that may be assigned.
Representative Eklund, please.
Mr. Speaker, the Ag Committee oftentimes will bring in the FFA Ag Issues teams to debate in front of us and train themselves for the state contest. And tomorrow morning at 8 o'clock, I know a lot of the Ag members can't make it, but others can. The committee from the Laramie FFA will be coming to present their Ag Issues deal. It will be innovating management or impeding rights on the topic of Bureau of Land Management Conservation Landscape Health Rule. And I'm not sure what this is about, so anybody else who doesn't could come and get a little bit of education from them as well.
Should be very informative, and I too have attended that, and it is well worth your time to see these young people do this. And so I would encourage you, if you have a moment, just please step in and enjoy that. That would be very good. Also, I'd like to let everybody know the interim topics that you guys are when you're going to be having your meetings. Please be willing to announce those and start getting those announced if you know when you're going to be having your interim topics meetings, so people can know to come and to be listening in on that as well. And I believe, Chief Clerk, that clears the deck. Mr. Majority Floor Leader.
Mr. Speaker, thank you.
I move that the House adjourn until, what is tomorrow? Wednesday, February 26th at 10 a.m.
You have heard the motion. All those in favor signify by saying aye. All those opposed, no. Motion carries. Folks, we are stand adjourned until tomorrow, the 31st day of session, February the 26th, 2025, 10 a.m. Have a good evening.